So from Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, for the last generation,
I'm
you have a choice.
the Republican
I
candidate
did
for
not
governor.
have sexual relations
And
with
I
that woman.
realized that this is something
Miss
he is
Lewinsky.
We're not going to
inherent.
be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
Hey, good morning, Cleveland. Good morning, Cleveland. Welcome to Backfire again this week. John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. Well, it looks like all of our new commissioners were in a lineup on Sunday's newspaper. What do you think about the picture there? They're all lined up there on the front page. All 7 of them, 7 new commissioners. What do you think that's going to do?
Well, I hope they, first of all, I hope they all do well. Not so much how many new commissioners there are that's really, I think, important for the everyday concerns of the community, but I think a big concern is the fact that the entire finance committee is being changed, and so there really aren't a lot of people on the commission who've spent much time working on the most complex area of the job. So it'll be interesting to see who ends up on that those committees and what kind of job and expertise they bring to that.
Well, the last 4 years, I'm not sure the Finance Committee's been functioning the way it really should have. You know, the Finance Committee is supposed to prepare the budget. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, the budget is actually put together completely in the mayor's office, sent over to them. They just kind of look over it and say yay or nay. They should take the responsibility on their own shoulders to prepare the county budget. And I hope they do.
So you're saying it shouldn't be prepared by the county executive?
It's not supposed to be. The county executive is supposed to prepare his budget, just like the sheriff prepares his budget, just like the trustee prepares his budget.
Just like the president's supposed to do his budget?
Executive budget. And then all of those budgets are sent to the Finance Commission, and the Finance Committee is supposed to actually compile all of it and decide where it works and where it doesn't work. Not just be a rubber stamp for the county mayor's office.
All right. What do you think, Franklin?
Well, I think John's probably correct about that. I think that the current composition of the county commission, with all this new blood coming in, I think it's much more likely that the budget will come out of the county mayor's office this year.
Possibly. But there's nothing stopping. These are all intelligent, capable people. And there's nothing stopping them from stepping in, taking the bull by the horns, and doing really what, when you look at our charter and the way that it's structured, that's exactly what's supposed to happen.
All right. Well,
it's a big budget, and it's a lot of money being administered and considered, and I hope that they all do a thoughtful and considerate job.
Now, the county mayor, though, hadn't he had a turnover in who's been normally preparing the budget in his office as well?
Well, I assume Dan Howell was probably involved in that
I
previously.
think Lynn is leaving, is she not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Lynn Burns, I believe.
Awesome.
Lynn was preparing the budget. So
she's one that's won all the awards.
Well, those are presentation awards, and not to take anything away from them, but they're presentation awards. But she is the person who probably is most responsible for helping to put that together, and she's gone as well. So, you know, it's going to be a new day on both sides of the Ocoee Street up there.
All right, we've got the new command coming in for Bradley County Sheriff's Department also. A lot of local faces coming into play here. Arnold Botts is going to be the Director of Support Services, Richard McAllister, Patrol Captain, Keith Edwards, Chief Deputy, Brian Smith, Sheriff Eric Watson, Captain of Corrections and Judicial Services, Gabe Thomas, and Captain of Criminal Investigations, Steve Lawson.
I think those are largely very popular moves in the community. I think that thus far, that's a very optimistic start for Sheriff Watson.
All very capable people.
And people with a lot of experience and people who've developed a lot of ties and relationships in the community. And I'm hopeful that that'll lead to great law enforcement. We'll see.
Now, Steve Lawson had been with the DEA, and he's done a great job
with the drug
task force. DTF.
Yeah, drug task force. And I know he's done a wonderful job getting that cleaned up and that mess they had over there. So who's going to be in charge of that? Does anybody know?
I don't know. Steve Crump, that's his area, and Steve had made it a point to say, unlike District Attorney Bebb when he took office, Steve's did not say anybody would lose their job. He had made the commitment that everyone that wanted to stay would be allowed to stay, assuming they met the goals and responsibilities that he was going to set for them. So I think this is a decision that Mr. Lawson made. He started with the Sheriff's Department, and I think he wanted to go back, and he enjoyed doing that, and I think that's what he wanted to do.
He's been in it a long time, and he knows what he's doing, so he'll do a good job.
And not to take anything away from any of the other people, but I think Brian Smith was one of the best choices that Eric Watson could have made.
Well, I think it was a wise decision. He's well regarded in law enforcement.
And has worked in every area of law enforcement.
One would hope that he would have an understanding of the budget process on the county commission, and that would lead to better relations between that organization and the funding body. So that's hopeful, I think.
Franklin, you still on the head of the museum?
No, I'm a past president.
Past president?
Yes.
Does that mean you get to have more fun now?
Definitely.
Well, I see where they're going to have the village people down there to headline.
Yeah, pretty excited this year.
Gala.
That's our new our big annual fundraiser this year, sponsored by Jones Management this year.
Check into cash, I believe.
Okay, and that's pretty exciting.
YMCA. I can see us out there now.
I can see you out there now. Right now.
Hey, John, here was something real interesting I saw. Thought I'd bring it up. Alaska election offers 2 chances to vote for Dan Sullivan. Two guys by the same name running for the same office, and both of them refused to use any initials.
That'll be hard to figure who that been. I don't know what the strategy there would be, because I don't know how you'd figure which way the voter was going to move.
I don't either.
There's some other problems, and I don't know. I haven't seen what I believe the election was last night. The Democrats were messing in the Republican primary up there, trying to pick the worst candidate to run. And again, that comes back to something I've talked about locally. I think we need closed primaries. I think people ought to, it used to be that if you were a Democrat, you said you were a Democrat and you took care of the Democrat Party. And if you were a Republican, you said you were a Republican and you took care of the Republican Party. I don't like it when Democrats cross over and meddle in our primaries, and I don't think it's right if we cross over and meddle in their primaries.
Well, each party has the right to just have a convention, don't they?
But that's even worse, because then you got 10,000 people show up at the Coliseum door, and how you sort those people out. Several years ago, we put forward a resolution for closed primaries, and it's not close from the standpoint, if you have a true change of heart and you think you're a Republican or you think you're a Democrat, you can switch, but you got to do it 60 days back from the election. And all that means is that if you truly feel like the party has trended away from your beliefs, I would assume you would know that 2 months before the election, and you can go down and say, I'm going to vote in the Republican primary, or I'm going to vote in the Democrat primary. But that would not allow the parties to organize these big efforts right at the end of the cycle, at a week before Election Day, for everyone to cross over and meddle in each other's primaries.
Well, I know that you've voiced that several times, and I know some elections have been changed by being able to come into one primary and vote.
Yeah, I was in Nashville at the state party meeting this past weekend. It was interesting because this has been more of an East Tennessee push, because we're really where the Republicans' resurgence in the state 15, 20 years ago kind of started. And so we're on the front end of seeing Democrats meddle in our primary. Now, that's not to say Republicans don't meddle either. I'm not trying to be partisan about that. But it was interesting this weekend, several of the people in Middle Tennessee told me, we've been opposed to that, but now we're starting to see it as well. People crossing over, and the crossover goes both ways. One of the ladies over there said, in my district in Nashville, it's a heavily Democratic district. And she said, if I don't cross over and vote in the Democrat primary, I really don't have a say. So we cross over and we try to pick the less liberal Democrat. And one of my comebacks to her was, well, if you believe that liberalism is wrong and you believe that the public will eventually see that, if you go over and you soften the Democrats and you pick the less liberal guy, you extend their tolerance with the voters. If you think they're so bad, then let them pick the most liberal guy. And maybe then you'll be able to actually elect a Republican at some point quicker. So it's hard to know how you're really being more effective, short term versus long term. I'm more of just an honor type person. If you're a Republican, vote in the Republican primary. If you're a Democrat, vote in the Democrat primary. And you know what? If you want to pick and choose, there's nothing wrong with that. But don't call yourself a Republican or a Democrat. Call yourself an independent. I can't stand these people who go, well, I'm mostly Republican, but I'm going to vote for this Democrat. Well, no, you're not. You're an independent. And there's nothing wrong with being an independent, but be an independent.
I guess the only problem I have with what you're saying is that all the taxpayers are funding those primaries.
That's a completely separate argument. I don't disagree with you. The argument
I mean, parties don't pay for their own elections.
Right.
Taxpayers do. So saying that you're going to restrict them in some way seems to me to be kind of problematic. Whether you think it's a good idea or bad idea or honorable or dishonorable.
But that opens up a whole other discussion. For example, Rosalind Carita, the Democrat Senate primary out in West Tennessee a few years ago. They got mad at her for voting for Ron Ramsey for lieutenant governor. So the Democrats tried to beat her. They got a candidate out. They worked hard. She won, now only by 14 votes, but she won. Well, what did the Democrat Executive Committee do? They went in and said, we don't care. Even though she won by 14 votes, we're not going to put her on the ballot. We're going to put her opponent on the ballot. And there was a lot of uproar about that, and should have been, but it's the same thing Franklin's talking about. Mm-hmm. They actually had the right to do that because it is completely a party function.
Well, it looks like we've got another gate coming up. We've got Perry Gate. Now we've got Bridge Gate and now Perry Gate.
Well, let me be the first to say that I think Perry Gate is a bridge to nowhere. It's not going anywhere. That prosecution's not going to go anywhere. And
why would they?
Although let me say I don't know anything about the ethics law in Texas that's supposedly involved in that. It certainly appears to be a political prosecution, and those are almost always bad ideas.
Now, this is the same prosecutor that brought the charges against Tom DeLay.
Rosemary Liebenberg.
Destroyed
No, she's not the one who brought the prosecution.
What's the same office?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And destroyed his career. After, I think, 4 years, it was finally completely thrown out and dismissed and said it shouldn't have happened, but his career was done after that. So,
if anything, it'll probably end up helping Governor Perry.
Well, when the New York Times editorial board, now they went way out of their way to say we don't like Perry. We think there's plenty of other reasons that he's a bad guy. However, they said that it appears to be overzealous prosecution. Now, this is the woman that he was trying to force out of office.
Well,
she was arrested for driving under the influence.
That's right.
She spit on the officers to the point where they had to put a spit mask on her. She kicked at them. She told them they were trying to ruin or going to ruin her career, and her blood alcohol level was over 3 times the legal limit, and she had to be restrained in a chair.
I saw that video on YouTube yesterday of her in the jail cell.
Well, this is one of those things where you can try to mix up issues. What Governor Perry was doing was likely a political response himself. That's fine. That's his job. He's an elected person.
Well,
to
he
do
had
that.
actually for over a year sent envoys to her office and requested that she step down.
Well, the issue had to do with vetoing funding for this board she served on.
Fully within his.
Maybe so. I again, trying to agree with you to a point here. I'm saying I'm not saying that he's free from politics in this. I'm saying that I don't think he committed a crime, and there shouldn't be a prosecution for this.
Well, former Clinton advisor Lanny Davis said it is even more outrageous to anyone who cares about due process and civil liberties to read the comments from local and state Democrats in the state of Texas Democratic Party about the Perry indictment. These cannot be Democrats who care about civil liberties or due process, much less the credibility of our party, which has always denounced those who presume guilt or even suggest wrongdoing after an indictment alone. That's Lanny Davis, Clinton advisor.
I don't see how things can get that far out of control. I mean,
this county apparently this was not a shock to anybody.
It's a real liberal county.
Very, very liberal.
With a Republican governor.
Right. Texas is a real odd state. This
Texas
is the same.
has got a long history
This is
of that.
well, now this is the same county that indicted Kay Bailey Hutchinson. They've indicted several Republican office holders, all of which have gone nowhere, but they do it for now. You know what's interesting? Yesterday, Steve Crump talked to Rotary Club, and this is one of the things he talked about a prosecutor, and I actually found it to be, and I hope the Banner has a nice story on it today, but a very, very honest and brave thing for a district attorney to talk about. He said, you all need to understand how powerful this office is and how important it is that you have someone of integrity in there. And he wasn't bragging on himself. I think the fact that he's willing to talk about this shows that he has that weight on his shoulders, which is a good thing. But he said, I can come out and I can announce an indictment or a investigation, a TBI investigation into someone. That person, it'll be written up. They'll have to explain it to their family, to their church. It'll hurt their business. And he said, and if it goes nowhere, he said, I've done nothing to them, but I have destroyed their reputation. I've destroyed their business. He said, you can do a lot as a prosecutor, good and bad.
I've actually had this conversation with General Crump before. Knowing when not to do something is probably the hardest decisions that a district attorney makes. Mm-hmm. What we sometimes overlook is that they're supposed to look at the big picture, not at the small picture. Sometimes it's very politically popular to do something, and sometimes it's not the right thing to do, or it's not the feasible thing to do, or sometimes you can know someone's guilty and know you can't prove it, and you're not doing the public or the process any good by chasing windmills, if you will. And it does call for wisdom and judgment, and I absolutely agree with that statement. The district attorney is probably the most powerful person that we elect around here, and it's a vast responsibility.
And I think we've elected an excellent one this time. And again, the idea that he would even bring the discussion up to talk about it means that he wants to make sure that he abides by that public trust.
I do agree with you. I think we've got a good one.
Well, and the Perry situation in Texas shows you really what he's talking about. You can use that office for good, or you can use that office for ill.
Well, let's just go ahead and jump right on into Eric Holder, heading to head off this St. Louis issue. You know, is this to a point that we have to have our top general go in?
I think that it's a wise thing to do, to have the investigation done that way. It will have a calming effect, I think.
Well, it depends on what Eric Holder says. I'm not arguing with you.
Well,
but it depends on, in the past,
saying,
they have actually jumped in and made comments before the facts were in
Well, he
place.
didn't make any inflammatory
This time
comments
so
yet.
far, they're doing better.
He said it was important that there be a full and fair investigation, and that he was coming to make sure that there was a full and fair investigation. I think that's the right thing to do. I thought the comments the president made were right down the middle.
What did he say?
Well, now there's some argument
What
on
did
that.
he say? I haven't heard him speak.
Well, the problem is he has weighed in a little heavier on the side of Michael Brown than he has on the officer.
What he said was that, first of all, people had the right to be safe and secure in their homes and on their streets. They had the right to engage in peaceful protest. Journalists had the right to cover stories like that without being affected by the police. And he also talked about the fact that looting and crimes and things like that were not acceptable, and nothing like that should happen. And he made no comment on whether anybody was guilty or innocent.
Well, he said that we've got to bring justice for Michael Brown, and
Well,
we need to
that is
honor
a-
Michael
it is
Brown. Well,
justice,
all the
though.
evidence that's coming out now
No.
is not favorable towards the victimhood of Michael Brown.
Justice is not always giving people what they want. It's having a process that's fair.
When some people are concerned with the third autopsy, which, by the way, the body's already been embalmed, which is a problem. You are now going to have 3 autopsies, and there's some indication in the past the Justice Department generally let the local investigation go, and then when that was done, if they felt like there were problems, then they came in and did an investigation. So there's some problems with parallel investigations.
That has an opportunity in it to have big discussions.
You mean like the 14 people that were killed in Chicago over the same weekend that's getting no discussion whatsoever? That could have big implications.
How about our Marine that did a wrong turn is in jail in Mexico?
Yeah, that could have big implications.
Well, you're seeing right now exactly why the Republican Party is going into the river.
No, you're not.
No, it is because it's an inability to consider what's actually happening.
What we consider is happening is that a shop owner down there who did nothing wrong got his windows kicked in and his business destroyed, and the president didn't come out and really over the top condemn that. Now tell me what that shop owner did wrong.
When you've got a community that's descending into chaos.
Actually, you don't. You have a community that's saying people are coming in from the outside agitators. The community is actually, at this point, including the Brown family, turning against the very people that are doing a lot of this.
What about
if
Al
the president
Sharpton?
wanted to do something, he could stop the outside influences. He could ask Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson to leave, who, by the way, have been booed by the local community when they came in to talk.
I think Obama, the best thing he could do is ask Mr. Sharpton and him to please leave.
Well, we have this thing called freedom of assembly in America, and that's not really one of the options.
So this is a good thing that we let those nuts run around there and stir this crap up.
What's a good thing is that we have a conversation about the underlying issues that are involved here. One of those issues.
What are they?
Well, the state of relations between law enforcement in communities and the African American citizens that they also serve is a legitimate thing for us to be talking about. The way that our law enforcement system and our criminal justice system interacts with those communities is a very important thing for us to talk about.
Well, by the way, when you talk about the Republican Party going into a hole, all of the administration in Ferguson and in the governor's office were elected by the people, and they're all Democrats. Everybody in the local government are Democrats. The governor is a Democrat. So
well,
please
don't really have anything to do with whether they're doing a good job or not.
You brought it up that because we take a position somehow, that's why said that's why the Republicans. Did you say that's why the Republicans are going into the hole?
Absolutely.
Well, the Democrats are in complete control of all of this. They're in control of all of the situation you're talking about.
Well, guess what? I'm not defending Democrats in the case.
Somehow it's our fault.
Hold on a minute. I've got a minister who sums it up pretty well, I think. I want to play something for you. Put on your headsets. This is a minister, a black minister, by the way, his name is Jonathan Gentry, and I think he sums up everything going on.
Hey everyone, it's Jonathan. I just want to get straight to the point about this Michael Brown incident. Let me tell you something, and I said this before. What we're doing out here is not helping. Us rioting, looting, burning down donut shops and stores and everything else, liquor stores, Shanae's hair salon for the extensions. This is not helping. I hate to say this, but I'm going to tell you what you need to hear imposing to what you want to hear. All we know how to do is blame the police and white folks for our actions. That's all we know how to do is blame police and white folks. They mistreating us. They beating on us. Oh, slavery still exists. Oh, I'm sick of it. All of a sudden, Black Panthers and NAACP come out the woodworks. They just came out of nowhere. Oh, we gonna want justice. We want justice. No justice, no peace. That's all you see. No justice, no peace. Shut up. Hate to tell the truth. Because I want to debunk that myth as far as being young and black and mistreated. I'm young, black, I drive a brand new BMW and live in the valley. How many encounters have I had with the police? Many. How many times has it got out of control? None. 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 So I want to debunk that myth about us getting mistreated and slavery. Oh, all they know how to do is beat on the black man. Nonsense. Nonsense. Because I had many encounters with the police and I became good friends with them. Tell me how come I could live that life and you can't? Reverend Al Sharpton, all you leaders out there, NAACP, let's get it together. Let's get it together because this is embarrassing. The whole country is watching us act like Planets of the Apes Part 3.
Frankly, my problem with this is if a Republican politician says what he just said, we're racist. Now, he'll be labeled an Uncle Tom.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to actually have an honest conversation about any of this.
Well, okay.
Tell me what's wrong with what he said.
First of all, although
is he a racist?
not quite in the emotional terms this gentleman used, that's very
Well,
similar to the speech that the president gave.
No, it's not.
In his comments
no,
on
it's
race.
Not at all.
Yes,
If
it is.
The president was dispassionate from start to finish. I'm not complaining.
Second of all, you just had this conversation about Al Sharpton. This guy's from Los Angeles. He's not a member of that community. So
but
you're
he's
talking
not
about
out there.
outsiders.
But he's
well,
not
there's an
out there
outsider.
either. He's not out there out in rallies.
He's trying. Here, I didn't play it all for you, Frank, but it goes back to Martin Luther King, and it talks about the things that he wanted, and the hope that he had, and you know the blacks have had opportunity. They could have more opportunity if they'd quit.
Jason Riley's an editorial board member
And
on the Wall Street Journal. He made the comment.
Everybody
he said,
can help themselves
when Martin
if
Luther
they'll
King
try.
marched in 1960. You didn't have these kind of riots. He said, "Are you telling me that there was less racism in 1960? Why didn't they burn
those kind of riots?
Huh? When Martin Luther King marched, he didn't have looting that followed him. He didn't have burning the neighborhoods down. He marched and talked about was there less opportunity? There was less crime in the black community in the 1960s. If there's racism is the problem, then why wasn't there more crime in the 1960s in the black community?
Well, John, there were a lot of riots in the black community.
There was less
60s.
crime. The crime now, 91%
after murders.
Actually, I'm glad you bring that up because 91% of the black murders are committed by other blacks.
Okay.
Not by whites and certainly not by white police officers.
Okay.
Well, where's the outrage on the president's part about that?
Yeah.
I've heard him speak about that numerous times. You just don't listen to them.
I listen to him all the time.
No, he's had several speeches about that very topic.
Mr. Holder's 63, Eric Holder's 63. And, you know, when you see the photographs, he's leaning forward. He's very concerned about all this. And, you know, he was a child born of the civil rights era. He grew up shaped by the images of the violence in Selma, Alabama, and joined sit-ins at Columbia University where protesters renamed an office after Malcolm X. Now in high office, he pushes for policy changes and is to fly Wednesday to Ferguson to personally promise justice. Is he the right person or the wrong person to go?
He's the top law enforcement official in the United States of America.
And that's why he prosecuted the Black Panthers who were standing out front of a pole slapping their billy sticks at people.
If the purpose of his visit is to instill confidence in the process, which is clearly broken down, then absolutely he's the right person for it.
This is the least defendable attorney general in the history of the country. Now, having said that, I'm not saying it's the wrong thing for him to go. I said it earlier. It all depends on what he does. But based on past performances, I'm concerned because he has not appeared to be impartial whatsoever.
Let's take a break.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Check into cash. The cash you need is closer than you think.
Get an auto title loan today for up to $2,500 at Check Into Cash.
You drive home with the cash in your pocket.
Visit Check Into Cash for an auto title loan today or get a payday advance for up to $425. Call toll-free 877-262-CASH. Title loan amount determined by value of car and ability to repay. Borrowers often use payday advances over a period of months, which can be expensive. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Guns, guns, and more guns. That's right, folks. U.S. Money Shops has just received a large shipment of pre-owned Glock 22s, 23s, and the awesome Beretta 8040D Cougar. These guns are law enforcement trade-ins that start at just $379.99 while supplies last. At U.S. Money Shops, there's no shortage of guns, so if you're looking for a great deal on a newer pre-owned gun, then check us out first.
Buy or sell or apply today. The better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Visit usmoneyshops.com for the location nearest you.
Wheeler Technologies has moved. Visit them at their new location at 490 Grove Avenue Southwest next to Bradley Rentals. Same great folks, same great service with a better location to serve you. Call Wheeler Technologies for voice, data, and security needs at 664-TECH. That's 664-8324. And remember, depend on Wheeler Technologies for the current time and temperature every day at 476-1111. Tennessee Alarm Contractor C1750.
Remember when Made in America meant something? Well, I believe it still does. I'm Alan Jones, chairman of Hardwick Clothes, the oldest tailor-made clothing maker in America. Want a higher quality blazer, sport coat, or suit? Visit us at hardwick.com to buy direct or find a retailer nearest you, where you buy the suit you need and not the three you don't. Join me in keeping Made in America alive and well by going to hardwick.com. And remember, there's no wick like a Hardwick, alive and still standing in Cleveland, Tennessee.
Ah, the sounds of summer. If you had a pool, from Matthews Pool and Spa Company, 902 Sahara Drive in Cleveland, Tennessee. Call them at 423-476-4521 and get the pool or spa of your dreams. Do it now, Cleveland. Locally owned and operated for over 25 years right here in Cleveland, Tennessee, with over 75 years of total experience in the installation of pools and spas. So check out Matthews Pool and Spa for your new pool, spa, or any accessories you may need for a pool or spa you already have. Check them out here in Cleveland on Sahara Drive, 476-4521. Look out, kids, I'm going to jump. Woo!
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
All right, we're back in the studio. I guess we can't go another day without talking about the SPCA. Bradley County SPCA Director Bobby Anderson terminated, and County Commissioner Charlotte Peake Jones resigns from the animal group. Bradley County SPCA Director Bobby Anderson was terminated, and County Commissioner Charlotte Peake Jones resigned. Anyway, it was all over. From what I understand, the county police called in a 911 call, or a call was in. Ms. Greville said Ms. Anderson did not respond to take an animal after Bradley County deputies received a 911 call from a resident regarding a pit bull. When the shelter did not take the animal in, it later bit the man. Mr. Gavelle said no one from the SPCA tried to call the deputy back. Part of the SPCA's contract with the county involves operating as animal control. Perk Evans stood up at the meeting and said, why would we continue to employ a person who has clearly violated contractual obligations to Bradley County? Ms. Gravell replied that it should not, and then addressed Ms. Anderson's as, right now you're terminated immediately. Then it went on to say that she wasn't, at this point Ms. Gravell made a motion, and however, Commissioner Peake Jones said you cannot fire anyone on your own. At this point, Ms. Gravell made a motion, and Ms. Anderson's dismissal. Commissioner Peake Jones asked to speak first, but Ms. Gravell would not let her have the floor. And Commissioner Peake Jones said, I am respectfully asking you to let me be heard before you make this decision. The motion passed, but Commissioner Peake Jones continuously asked Ms. Gravell to rethink her decision.
It was pretty obvious that a decision had been made before the board convened.
Plus, there's Robert's Rules of Orders. If you've got a board member and they request permission to, address the floor, you generally have to give them the floor.
And of course, Commissioner Peake Jones was correct. The chairman of a board can't fire somebody on their own without the board's support and approval. But obviously that decision had been made before the meeting.
Well, and even still, when you have a motion and a second, then you have discussion.
Yeah.
And to not allow discussion.
And why they wouldn't allow at least the person to speak in their own defense is just
Politically though, I have to say I hate to say I'm happy to see Commissioner Jones resign, but I think politically this is probably the best thing for her is to get out of this situation, because she has beaten her head against the wall trying to do good for the public, and it just doesn't seem like people are able to put their emotions aside long enough to talk about these things and work through. Obviously there are problems, but you can't go at everything emotionally like this and end up with a good situation. And so I think politically, I hate to say it, I'm glad to see her out, just so she's out of the line of fire.
Well, who's running the thing now? What's going on? Does anybody know?
I guess in theory, the chairman of the board is temporarily running things until they have a new director in place. It said that there'll be an interim one named soon. I'm not sure that's a job I would want.
Well, generally, if you fire someone and say, get out, you got to have an interim right then.
It was announced the next SPCA meeting will be held September 2nd at 5:30.
Who's going to run the thing between now and then?
It's beyond me. I don't really understand what's transpiring out there.
Dan Rawls got involved in it. Is he on that board up there?
I didn't actually understand that one because he was shown as commissioner-elect, so he couldn't be the county commission's designee before he's sworn in.
He doesn't miss his meetings.
So I don't know the answer to that one.
Oh, Lord. Anyway, that's kind of getting to be a joke. I wish the city and the county could work this out and try to put something back together again. I think the system was better before they tore it apart and tried to fix it.
I think everybody would have to agree on that one.
Well, at this point, there's, originally you can always make the argument we're going to do it better, but at this point, I mean,
you can't make that
the proof's in the pudding.
Well, all I know is I guess we're saving money by having all these arguments and fights and fusses, right?
Well, I suppose.
Let's go back in history a little bit and talk about some of the things that we're not talking about because of all the riots and everything else. We've got our soldier in Mexican prison. Anybody heard anything about that lately?
Well, the president to this day has still not asked the Mexican government to release him. There's been no formal request for him to be released.
We're still waiting on that one. Benghazi, anything new in Benghazi happened lately?
Well, yes, Franklin's going to tell you that
Republican
they've all
panel
been cleared.
A week and a half ago released their report and found no misconduct. Not that there weren't mistakes made. Nobody's ever said that. There was no misconduct. None of these conspiracies we talked about, no stand-down orders, no telling people they couldn't shoot back. None of that stuff ever occurred.
Everything was just perfect then?
It's a House Republican panel that looked at it, and it was the fourth House Republican panel to issue such a report.
Franklin, the fact of the matter
and the report didn't say we're not comfortable with our conclusions because we haven't gotten the information. It was their conclusions.
Well, we still don't know what the CIA was doing out of that secret office down there. We're pretty sure what they were doing. They were funneling guns into the neighboring country. And that's part of the reason we didn't get the response, because they didn't want that to come out. We also know that the men on the ground in there stole the State Department phones and were using it to coordinate with other terrorists, and the State Department was listening to those phone calls in time, so they knew it was a terrorist operation, but they refused to admit that it's not a new one. Franklin, look it up.
That's the first time I've heard
when they got in the compound, all of those people had State Department cell phones. Those cell phones are trackable and they're monitorable, and so the terrorists took the cell phones, and by the way, I talked about this about a month ago on the show with you, and they took the phones and began calling and coordinating with other known terrorist organizations. The State Department was listening to those phone calls while the attack was going on. So they knew immediately that this was in fact a terrorist attack, coordinated terrorist attack, not a uprising of locals. And yet they continued with the narrative for weeks that this was a local uprising.
I'm going to repeat. Investigations by Republican-controlled committees have 4 times now concluded there were no misconduct.
We had to do that to get another vote in. Let's take a call.
4 times.
Let's take a call. Caller, you're live.
Good morning, everybody. How you doing?
Hey, good. How about you?
I just wondering, I just want John's opinion, everybody else's opinion there on something that's disturbed me. Last night they said that a journalist was beheaded. Now they're trying to use that as an excuse for us to stop bombing over it. Now, what can be done to stop all this crap?
You talking about where now?
ISIS has beheaded an American journalist. They've got a second one they're holding, and they've sent direct statements to the Americans. Said that they've got the second guy held up, and one of the terrorists is standing beside him with a big sword. It says, "The life of this American citizen, Obama, depends on your next decision." Now, once again, Franklin, we can look at this situation from this point forward, just like you're talking about Benghazi, and you can go, oh, well, he's not doing anything wrong now. The problem is ISIS could have been bombarded 9 months ago when the Kurds were asking us to bombard them before they got all the American equipment that they now have, before they took all of the territory that they now have. And this president, as usual in these kind of crises, sat on his hands and didn't do anything until the crisis was too big to deal with effectively.
ISIS is taking those actions in response to the pressure that the U.S. is putting on them right now.
But Franklin, the point is, we could have devastated them 8 months ago.
ISIS was not in that part of Iraq 9 months ago.
That's the point. We could have bombed them before they got there. We could have destroyed them if this president had a backbone.
Caller, you got any more questions? All right. Well, I will say, the reporter didn't have to be there, and he'd still have his head.
Since 2012.
It's a terrible tragedy what's happened to him. All right, make no mistake about that. But your point's well taken. Journalists know when they're going into some areas of the world that it's a dangerous place to be.
Well, not really, because that's just the JV team, according to the White House. This is the JV team that just beheaded this guy. The team back in January that wasn't anything to worry about, but now the Secretary of Defense says that it's an existential threat to the entire world.
See, now, these are the very people that 2 years ago John thought we should be given weapons.
Franklin, the fact that this president is too incompetent to have his own former Secretary of State says he has no foreign policy.
The problem is that your party lacks the moral backbone to admit they were wrong. They wanted to arm these people.
No, they didn't,
Franklin.
Yes,
they did.
Let me explain this to you.
And the president
when we wanted
said,
to arm them,
we're not doing
Franklin,
it because we can't figure out yet who the good people and the bad people are.
No, by the time he said that, you're right. But at the time we started asking him to arm,
you wanted to give these people surface-to-air missiles so they could shoot down more airliners.
Franklin, I'm trying not to get mad. Your president has collapsed the entire order of the world, and you still defend this incompetent, bumbling idiot.
Your party lacks
Franklin,
the
is the
moral
world better or
backbone
worse since Bush left office?
That you
is
have
the world
no
in better
idea what you're
Is the
talking
world
about.
in better shape or worse shape since Bush left office?
Screwed this situation up for a
better
decade.
Or worse, Franklin?
And you're so upset because somebody else is trying to clean up your mess.
Wait a minute, clean up what mess?
What mess has he made better? Which part of the world is better?
Created with this Iraq fiasco.
Which world is better now? Is the world better or worse since Bush left office? Has Obama improved or collapsed?
Oh, I think we've made a real start
toward
dealing with those problems.
You are in the vast minority of the public, and even Hillary Clinton says that he's been a disaster. Of course, she's trying to save her own butt.
I can't believe Hillary's sitting there saying that,
he has
Obama's
cohesive,
stupid foreign policy.
That's according to your
quote,
girl.
Actually.
It's not?
Read the whole quote, not the headline.
Oh.
Which is different from that.
She says he has no coherent foreign policy.
You should also read later in the same interview.
To talk. Let's take a call. She's a good one to be saying anything about foreign policy. Go ahead, caller, you're live.
You know what I think about this? I think we were seeing John and Doughball over there and let them straighten it out.
No, I think we ought to send all the libs over and let them kumbaya them over.
No, I think y'all should go over there.
Look, Red, one of the problems
If I could carry a tune, that might be a viable
One of the problems,
solution.
Red, is this president doesn't understand that we are in a global war with jihadis, but most of them, it's Islam. Hamas makes the statement that the only way there'll be peace in the Middle East is when Israel is destroyed. How do you negotiate with you don't negotiate with someone like that. The only thing they understand is force and power.
But say John, if you were over there, you could explain all that.
You don't explain it to them with your voice. You explain it to them with an F-16 jet.
Or you shoot them with some pig blood. Just get you some water guns, those big backpack water guns, and fill it full of pig blood.
Red, it's real simple. Do you
They're
think
scared
the
of that.
world looks like it's improved in the last 6 years, or there's more problems?
Do you think you're safer now, Red, or
I never did feel safe.
Okay.
I got something for you, though, Doughball.
What you got?
Are you going to take that challenge?
No, I'm not taking that ice challenge.
Oh, come on.
No, but I heard you say you were.
I will if they'll let me pour it on Matador.
I tell you what, I'll arrange that. Just to have you down here.
Full now. I don't want just a cup. I want a bucket full.
No, you got to do a bucket, just like Fro Daddy did.
Now, Froday said he was going to do it with a cup, and I said, no, you have to do it with a bucket.
Now, we'll get it done.
Okay.
All right, we'll set it up. Can we charge admission?
No, I don't think so. All I'm going to do is pour water on it and leave.
All right. Matador said he'd do it if he could go first, pour it on you first.
No, that's not the deal.
That's what he said he'd have to do it.
I pour it on him first.
No, because you wouldn't go then.
Oh, yeah, I'll stand there and let him pour it on me.
All right, we got to go. Bye-bye. All right, where were we? Oh, we was talking about Hillary Clinton talking about Obama's stupid foreign policies, but that's not a
That
head.
wasn't the quote from it.
Oh, what was it exactly he said, Franklin? You know?
Well, you
Or
got the article in your
said.
hand.
She said.
It probably has the quote in it, but the quote was that the statement that's come out of the Obama White House that the organizing principle was don't do stupid stuff was not itself a coherent foreign policy.
Well, let's see. I'll read it here. Hillary Clinton blasts President Obama's foreign policy in an interview published Sunday, saying her former boss's failure to have a clear strategy for the Middle East has spawned the current Islamic State crisis in Iraq.
Crisis? Did she say crisis?
Mm-hmm.
Gee, Franklin, does that sound like a positive
Well, I
statement?
think we all agree that there's a crisis going
and
on, John.
she's attributing it to your president that you're defending.
Well, later on in the interview, she
By the
didn't
way,
say
let me
Wait a minute,
give
here's the stupid. Let me get there. Great nations need organizing principles and don't do stupid stuff. It is not an organizing principle, said Clinton, who was Obama's first Secretary of State.
Well, let me explain. Let me put it in perspective for you, Franklin. Right now on the news, we're seeing a story where the British Prime Minister is heading home from his vacation, cutting it short to meet on Iraq and Syria. After the beheading announcement came out, where was the President Obama last night? On Air Force One, headed back to his vacation. That tells you all you need to know.
It's unfortunate, once again,
that he can't cut his vacation short. The French
it's
are making fun
unfortunate
of him.
once
When
again
the French
that
are
the
making
Republican
fun of
Party
you
can't
for
grow up.
taking too many vacations.
That they can't hold this president to the same low standard they held the previous
Franklin,
one.
I said this
when it was
to
their
other people,
guy.
and they said, "Oh, well, Bush took a lot of vacations." It's not the number of vacations; it's when.
It's not
this
the
guy
number
needs to
because
cut it.
it's your guy.
The British Prime
Just
Minister
admit
cut his
it.
vacation short. Our guy flies back to his vacation. There's your example.
Well, at least he wasn't in Hawaii this time, John. He did.
No, it's just in Martha's Vineyard. You know, that common vacation
Well,
spot.
I know, but at least this time, I mean, every year in the past he's gone to Hawaii, right?
No, not every time.
I thought
but he's gone to Hawaii a good bit.
Okay. Well, at least he's somewhere close this time.
But, you know, Hawaii's getting ready to elect a Republican governor, so he's probably not really happy with going back there anymore. And when Hawaii is electing a Republican governor, the Democrats are really in trouble.
Eric Gardner, we hadn't heard about him in a while. You know who he is. He's the guy that in New York, the great big black guy that was the city police got in a chokehold and killed. And Al Sharpton's up there stirring up the thing with Mayor de Blasio or whatever his name is, wanting to have a march across the bridge.
Yeah, now, I've got a little essay here on big government equals big beatings. Now, this is written by a black author talking about this.
Okay.
And one of the things, that was actually one of the examples he used, said it was big government that allowed slavery to exist in this nation until we fought a bloody war to end it. It was big government that instituted Jim Crow and literacy tests and poll taxes to prevent blacks from exercising their legitimate franchise. It was big government that concocted the Great Society, which sought to re-enslave an entire population to the plantation that is the welfare state. Well, guess what? Mr. Garner died for. He died at the hands of the police last month, choked to death for the crime of selling untaxed cigarettes. Big government is the real reason that you have oppression of any people, and certainly of the black community.
Untaxed cigarettes.
Untaxed cigarettes was his crime, and he was choked to death for selling untaxed cigarettes.
Well, let me say something. I think the government created that crime.
That's the point of this
because
essay.
in New York, I think a pack of cigarettes is what, $10, $8 to $10. So they created that problem themselves.
By the way,
let me. Can I read something here?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, and this will take just a few moments, but I want to read it to you, and then
I want to give you every chance you.
And I want you to tell me what it is I've just read to you. Number 1, stimulate improved job safety of our workers through assistance to the states, employees, and employers. Number 2, continue and further perfect its programs of assistance to the millions of workers with special employment problems, such as older workers, handicapped workers, members of minority groups, and migratory workers. Number 3, strengthen and improve the federal state employment service and improve the effectiveness of the unemployment insurance system. Number 4, protect by law the assets of employee welfare and benefit plans so that workers who are the beneficiaries can be assured of the rightful benefits. Number 5, assure equal pay for equal work regardless of sex. Number 6, federally assisted construction and maintain and continuous the vigorous administration of the federal prevailing minimum wage law for public supply contracts. Number 7, extend the protection of the federal minimum wage laws. Number 8, continue to fight for the elimination of discrimination in employment because of race, creed, color, national origin, ancestry, or sex. Number 10, revise and improve the Taft-Hartley Act so as to protect more effectively the rights of labor unions, management, the individual worker, and the public. What did I just read to you?
I guess it was from the Homeland Security's new.
No,
I mean, what? It's a lot of nothing.
I just read to you Dwight Eisenhower's presidential platform for 1956.
All right.
Well, I'm happy.
And you think that Barack Obama is way out on the left.
Now, let me explain this to you.
These are wonderful
in
things.
fact, he's in bed with Dwight Eisenhower.
These
Franklin,
are wonderful things.
Let me put it in perspective for you.
Lord,
one of my dad's first big political activities was working on the floor of the 1952 Republican Convention as a floor organizer for Taft, who was the conservative alternative to Eisenhower. Eisenhower was a progressive. Now, he wasn't anywhere near what this guy is, but yeah, Eisenhower did a lot of things way too progressive for us. We've been going down this road for about 60 years, Franklin.
All right, folks,
and
just think about that.
He's too progressive.
How did you all all my Republican friends, did you all grow up thinking that Dwight Eisenhower was a flaming liberal?
I didn't say he was a flaming liberal. I said he was too progressive. But see, Franklin, here's the difference.
It used to be in John's world that liberal was a bad word. Now progressive is a bad word.
They're sort of the same, Franklin. Liberalism, progressivism.
I'm just making the point that it's not we who've moved to the left. It's your party that's gone way to the right.
Let's take a call. Caller, you still there?
Yes. I'd like to thank Franklin for acknowledging the fact that there's virtually, since 1913, there's virtually no difference between the establishment Republicans and the establishment Democrats. It's a progressive agenda. They're not small government. Eisenhower was not small government. He was big government. And so thank you for the acknowledgement. Well, but in actuality, that doesn't mean anything. All it does is acknowledge that progressivism has existed for at least that term of time.
I mean, Teddy Roosevelt was really one of the first progressives, Franklin. Here's the real example for you, Franklin. These are Republicans, and I'm willing to criticize them. Where's your criticism of this president? Yeah. I mean, this guy has screwed up more things, and you will never criticize this guy. Are you afraid of being called a racist?
From the ridiculous things you guys talk about.
You guys.
Yeah, you guys.
Well, let me.
You know why you have big government people? Because big government progressives don't have any clues about how to do things themselves. They must rely on the government to not only tell them what to do, but to steal from other people, the taxpayers, to be able to enforce laws that they cannot enforce themselves and are morally bankrupt for trying to do it.
Thanks, Dan.
Franklin, let me correct something we talked about last week that you denied. This is relying on Planned Parenthood of Middle Tennessee versus Sundquist as precedent. In 2002, the Tennessee Court of Appeals ruled in favor of the owners of 2 busy abortion facilities and struck down the state law requiring licensure of such businesses in our state. As a result, half of those businesses in Tennessee which advertise and provide abortion services are not licensed by the Tennessee Department of Health nor inspected.
We were talking about the Tennessee Supreme Court, not the Tennessee Court of Appeals.
Listen to me, Franklin. What I said was their ruling, which was Planned Parenthood of Middle Tennessee versus Sundquist, that was the precedent that struck down all of our ability to license and regulate abortion facilities.
We were talking about the Tennessee Supreme Court,
and I
John,
said that
and that's not a Tennessee Supreme Court decision you just read.
Well, Franklin, quit being a lawyer and admit that Tennessee cannot license or inspect abortion facilities because of the ruling that the state Supreme Court made. Now, whether it had to filter through the next level of court, that's fine. But the fact of the matter is they're not licensed, they're not inspected because the liberal Supreme Court struck down any ability of the legislature to enact laws to do that.
John, there are vastly fewer abortions in Tennessee
Are
today than there were 25 years ago.
Are you going to admit that they're not licensed and inspected?
No, I don't agree with that.
Well, then you don't agree with the
Court of
Appeals. The Court of Appeals ruled in favor of the owners of 2 busy abortion facilities, and now listen, Franklin, struck down the state law requiring licensure of these facilities.
You would have to go in and read what the licensure requirement was.
They struck it down.
They didn't strike down licensure requirements completely. They struck down those licensure requirements.
You know, guys, when you listen to that's a lawyer talking to you. Here's the point: when you go to an abortion facility in Tennessee,
that's a dentist talking about the law.
I
don't talk to you about plaque because I wouldn't know anything about it.
Well, I'm glad you find this funny.
The
That
Court of
women are going
Appeals,
into
the Court of
uninspected,
Appeals
unsafe abortion clinics because of your
is
liberal.
below the Tennessee Supreme Court.
You're right, Franklin, and they took the precedent that the Tennessee Supreme Court ruled on and used it to strike down the law, which is exactly what I said. The Tennessee Supreme Court ruling was the basis for not allowing any regulation of abortion.
The Supreme Court ruling you're referring to didn't even have anything to do with abortion.
It had to do with the legislature not having the responsibility and the right to regulate.
Here's the actual amazing thing here.
Please quit playing with this issue.
Here's
you
the
are playing with people in this issue.
Here's the actual amazing thing. I have spent 2 years in here with John talking about big government. And I've spent 2 years listening to him talk about how the Constitution and individual rights are what counts. And this is a Tennessee Supreme Court ruling that said our Constitution gives our citizens more individual rights. And John's in here arguing for more government.
Franklin,
and this is why the top of my head blows off.
Answer a simple question, Franklin.
Because
answer a simple question.
As it's convenient, all of that morality and all those principles go out the window.
Franklin, answer me a simple question. Abortion facilities in Tennessee are required to be licensed. True or false?
They are regulated,
no,
John.
Are they required
I don't know
to be
licensed means.
Once again, folks, there's your lawyerly answer. The answer is false. They are not required, and they are not required because of a Tennessee appeals court ruling based on the Supreme Court ruling that Franklin defends. The Supreme Court wiped away the legislature's any ability to regulate abortion facilities in the state of Tennessee.
And this is what I'm talking about. What you're saying is totally false.
What basis did the appeals court use to strike down the licensure law? What basis?
They may have used a Tennessee Supreme Court case, but the Tennessee Supreme Court case didn't have anything to do with abortion.
Franklin,
this is the point, John. You're picking and choosing,
no, I'm
and it's
not.
just wrong.
That is an insult.
You're misleading
Franklin,
people.
that is an insulting argument, and you know
it's not
you
insulting.
know exactly what the Tennessee Supreme Court was doing. They took away all right of the legislature to regulate. Therefore, any regulation the legislature had passed was unconstitutional.
They did not take away all right to regulate.
They most certainly
did.
That's
not true.
Franklin.
We'll get to the bottom of this next week. Franklin, you bring back the correct answer. But in the meantime, I want to say, before we leave, that witnesses have given investigators sharply conflicting accounts in the Missouri case. And
sure,
I think the only thing that's going to this is a Hickson prediction, and I hope it doesn't happen. But I think
what?
This is a Hickson prediction, and I hope that this does not happen. But I think there will be a police officer in Missouri killed before this incident stops.
Michael Brown's body fell 2 feet in front of the officer face first, which means he was right on the officer and he was moving towards him.
Well, and you probably saw the video in the store and some of this stuff before. So, I just think they're really making I think they're making...
The crowds are actually chanting, "Kill the police."
That's right. Well, that's the... that's the
now, who's in the crowd? The arrests that were made on, I think, Sunday night, only 4 of them were local people. All the rest of the arrests were outside people.
But I hate to say this, but I'm going to do a Hickson prediction.
We don't
There's
know
going
what
to be a
happened.
white police officer die before this thing stops. Bye-bye. We got to go.
We don't know.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin Chansey. Catch them